This video prepares you for the quiz on 5.7 for Geometry Block. These will be the 4 objectives for this video, and if you know these 4 things, you'll do well in the quiz. So as a reminder, the Pythagorean Theorem is written a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And this works for right triangles, where a and b are the legs. So this could be a leg over here, a or b, and this could be a leg over here, a or b. And c is the hypotenuse, which is always going to be across from that right angle. So we can plug in x, 7, and 11 accordingly. X squared plus 7 squared is equal to 11 squared. Or x squared plus 49 is equal to 121. If we subtract 49 from both sides, we get 72. And to cancel out the squared on the left, we have to take the square root of both sides. For our quiz this week, we will not be requiring you to simplify the radical form. So normally I'd teach a whole method to do that. Instead, just enter in your calculator the square root of 72 and round. So I did this on my calculator, and this is what I got. And on the quiz, you'll be asked to round to the nearest tenth, which means we're going to round this decimal place. So we look to the one that's 1 to the right. Here it's an 8. If it's 5 or bigger, then we raise the 4 to a 5. If it's below 5, we keep it as a 4. Since this is 5 or above, we can round this to 8.5. Number 5 from the practice was pretty tricky. There's not actually one like this on the quiz. Diagonal length of 19, there's your hypotenuse. They give you a ratio for the width and height. So the 5x and 4x would document the ratio. And since we're plugging in for a and b, you have to square the 5s and the 4s as well. So if you take 25 and 16x squared and add them together, you get 41x squared, and 19 squared is 361. If you divide that and take the square root, you can figure out what x is, and then plug it back in for 4x and 5x. And 11.869 rounds to 11.9. And 14.836 rounds to 14.8. But again, you won't see one like that in the quiz. Number 7, c is 20. We know that because it's the hypotenuse. We can simply put an x for the missing side length. And if we move things over and find the square root, x is equal to 16. The follow-up question for number 7, is this a Pythagorean triple? And for this formula, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, Pythagorean triple, all that means is no decimals. We have all whole numbers. So we have a 12, we have a 16, and we have a 20. Is that a Pythagorean triple? Yes. Yes, it is. For 15, 6 squared plus 8 squared is equal to x squared. We add together 36 and 64. It's 100. You take the square root. The hypotenuse is 10. For 16, our hypotenuse is 13. So we plug in like this. We square the numbers. We do our subtraction, and again we have a radical. So for the purpose of the quiz, you just put this in your calculator, you get 9.3808, you round to the nearest tenth, so this becomes 9.4 because this number is 5 or bigger. And there's your final answer. However, if you did want to simplify this radical, you could turn this into the square root of 22 times 4. And the reason why you would do that is because you can take the square root of 4, and you would pull that outside of the radical, and this becomes 2 root 22. Which, if you test it, is the exact same thing as this answer over here. This is called simplified radical form. Good to know, not on the quiz. Number 18, with this ratio of 3 to 5, they set it up here, 3x and 5x, and then 8 feet long for the slide. That's our hypotenuse. They want to know what are the height and distance from the base to the front of the slide. So we plug it in like this, and remember that parentheses help, because it helps us to remember that we're looking at 9x squared. And 25x squared is equal to 64. So this is kind of tricky because we're dealing with fractions and square roots and then plugging back in, but the steps are the same. 34x squared is 64, divide by the number in front of x squared. You get this fraction. I like to wait to the very last step to round if possible. Take the square root of both sides, and 3 times this number is 4.1 when you round to the nearest tenth. Oh, they said round to the nearest inch, excuse me. So this would actually be 4, and this would be 7, because here we're round to the nearest inch rather than the nearest tenth. So next up, this triangle inequality theorem idea is if you have 3 sides in a triangle, the sum of the lengths of any 2 sides of a triangle is going to be greater than the length of the third side. So practically, how do we test that? we figure out which one's the longest side. Here that's AC. And we say that add the other two together, it has to be bigger. So is 6 plus 6 bigger than 12? No. Is 14 plus 26 bigger than 39? Yes. Is 2 plus 4 bigger than 8? No. Is 5 plus 6 bigger than 7? Yes. Is 6 plus 8 bigger than 14? No. Is 9 plus 7 bigger than 15? Yes. This is how we determine, is it possible to make a triangle with 3 given side lengths? Another way to use the Pythagorean theorem is on any triangle, whether it's right or otherwise. And in fact, there's this inequality here that is a key difference. Typically, a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared for right triangles. But if a squared plus b squared is greater than c squared, then we know the triangle is acute. And if a squared plus b squared is less than c squared, we know that the triangle is obtuse. And they're referring to this angle here. If it's acute, it's less than 90. If it's obtuse, it's greater than 90 and less than 180. So these are the practice problems, 9, 10, 11, and 13. So for number 9, the first step is to figure out, can it make a triangle? Is 7 plus 10 bigger than 12? And the answer is yes, it can. Then we add up 7 squared and 10 squared, and we calculate 12 squared. And is this bigger than 144? Yes, it is. Since it's greater than, we can classify this triangle as acute. For number 10, is 9 plus 11 bigger than 15? Yes, so it's possible to make a triangle with these side lengths. And if we simplify this a little bit, we find that a squared plus b squared is less than c squared. In this case, we're going to classify the triangle as obtuse. Number 11, the two smaller sides, add them together. Are they bigger than the third side? Yes, so it's possible to form a triangle. Then if we simplify the two sides, 1600 plus 81 is equal to 1681. So this is a right triangle because a squared plus b squared equals c squared. For number 13, is it possible that this is a triangle? 5.9 plus 6, is that bigger than 8.4? And the answer is yes. And if you simplify the rest, we find that it's bigger than, which means it's acute. So greater than acute, equal right, less than obtuse.